Okay, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we've got quite a challenging stack of sources lined up.
Yeah, challenging is the right word.
They don't just ask how we should lead, they seem to fundamentally redefine what authority, maybe even success, really means,
Yeah.
especially in leadership.
Absolutely. It's like a deep dive into the organizational DNA, you could say.
Yeah.
Our sources are arguing that the leadership model we often see, based on charisma, being visible, gaining power, it's actually in crisis.
A crisis how?
Well, think about it. Too many leaders, they rise up, look successful because they're competent, skilled, but then they falter, sometimes catastrophically. Usually it comes down to character.
And that causes burnout, right?
Yeah.
Fractured teams, broken trust.
Exactly. So these sources say recovering this servant leadership model isn't just nice, it's essential.
Right. And I think that crisis is something everyone listening can probably relate to.
Hmm.
Whether you're running a startup, a big nonprofit, maybe just a volunteer group.
For sure.
So our mission today, it feels pretty disruptive because the core question these sources are pushing is, well, it's radical. What if the real measure of a leader wasn't how many people follow you, but how many people you're actually willing to serve?
That's the heart of it. We're unpacking this idea the sources call servant leadership, and they frame it very specifically as the DNA of fruitful eldership.
Okay, DNA?
Yeah, it suggests a complete inversion, a flip. The way up, they insist, is actually down. It's this path of humility, of self-giving, relentlessly.
So this isn't just about, like, being polite or being a nice boss, is it?
Oh, not at all. It's a total philosophical shift in how influence even works.
We need to dig into that paradox you mentioned.
Yeah.
The sources insist servant leadership isn't weakness. That feels counterintuitive.
It does, but they argue it's the opposite. It's the paradoxical power of humility. That's what creates organizations that actually last.
So humility equals endurance.
That's the idea. It's the foundation for resilience. Think about it. If you build your influence like a tower based on personal gain, when that tower eventually wobbles or falls.
Everything underneath gets crushed.
Right. But if you build on a foundation of service, your influence becomes, woven into the fabric of the organization. It becomes essential, and therefore it endures.
Okay, let's unpack this, this inversion. Because, in every boardroom, every committee, even just in daily life, our culture rewards the climb, right?
Yeah.
Getting ahead, getting prestige. So where does this whole idea of downward mobility actually come from?
Well, the sources ground it in a really powerful theological concept. It's known as kenosis.
Kenosis. Okay.
Now, don't worry too much about the Greek word. It simply means the principle of self-emptying.
Self-emptying?
Yeah. It comes from a key text, Philippians 2, that describes ultimate power, in this case, Christ's power, not as grabbing more, but as radical self-limitation, giving of oneself rather than accumulating for oneself.
Wow. That framing is instantly countercultural, isn't it?
Totally.
It's like saying influence is energy you spend on others, not cash you pile up for yourself. And the sources give a model act, a picture that really crystallizes this. I think that's crucial for listeners to visualize.
Yeah, the key image is from John 13, Jesus with a towel and a basin washing his disciples' feet.
The foot washing.
Right. That single act just shatters the illusion that leadership means climbing the ladder, getting away from the dirty work. It shows authority being authenticated by, service.
Okay, but how does washing feet translate today for, say, a CEO or a team lead? Is it literally doing the grunt work, or is it more about, like, giving up power to help someone else succeed?
It's kind of both, actually. Yeah. The sources talk about the towel and basin representing sacramental presence.
Sacramental presence,
meaning getting close. Proximity, getting your hands dirty with the messy reality of the organization and the people in it. It means maybe setting policies that genuinely protect the most vulnerable people on your team. And yeah, it also means being willing to take the hit, take responsibility for failure, or do that unglamorous work when it needs doing. The contrast they draw is stark. The world says leadership is control, prestige, recognition. This kingdom view, as they call it, says real lasting influence flows directly from that posture of service, from the towel, basically.
And this really gets to the heart of why this matters for you, the listener. It critiques how we choose leaders, doesn't it? We often pick people based purely on skill, or they're charismatic, they speak well.
Right.
But we neglect to look for that spiritual depth, that formed character needed to actually sustain the role when things get tough, when the pressure hits, or temptation.
And the consequence of neglecting that character piece, it's almost a guarantee of organizational problems or even ethical collapse down the line. The emphasis has to shift.
Away from just competence.
Well, not away from it, but putting character first. If we promote just on competence, we're kind of setting ourselves up for division, burnout, disillusionment. It's almost inevitable.
Okay, so let's talk about this DNA then. The sources are really insistent. Character always precedes competence.
Always. Skills, they argue. You can develop those. You can train people. But integrity, that has to be formed, often through hard knocks, through testing.
Right. And the list of qualifications they point to, it's such a reversal of what our culture usually values. It's things like faithfulness, hospitality, self-control, not just being a brilliant strategist or speaker.
Exactly. Leaders who try to skip that foundational character work might get some short-term wins, sure, but they lack the internal scaffolding to handle the long haul.
This is where it gets really interesting for me. What are the specific traits? You called them the genes earlier. What makes up this DNA of fruitful, enduring leadership?
The sources lay out basically 3 core components that work together. First is humble identity.
Humble identity.
Yeah, it means the leader's sense of self, their worth, is rooted in something stable, something outside their job title or public praise. They're actively fighting entitlement. They seek, genuine validation, not just applause.
Can you give me a practical marker for that? Outside a purely spiritual context, how does that show up at work?
Okay, good question. Think about low defensiveness.
Low defensiveness.
Yeah. When you get corrected or someone critiques your work, how fast do you push back or lash out or start making excuses? A leader with this humble identity, they're willing to actually receive correction. They see it as valuable data, maybe, and they can make changes without their ego getting in the way.
That's huge. Focusing on the process, not just protecting their image.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. It's a really useful measure of maturity, actually.
Okay, so humble identity is one. What's next?
Second is moral and relational integrity. This is like the soil where influence actually grows. Transparency in how decisions get made. Faithfulness to your word, your commitments, being scrupulous with finances. Integrity means there's no gap, ideally, between the private person and the public leader.
Right. Consistency. What you see is what you get.
And finally, competence does still matter, right? It's not just character.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Competence is crucial, but notice its position last here. The third trait is steadfast calling and competence.
Okay.
You do need demonstrable skills. You need to be able to govern, resolve conflicts, set a clear vision, all that. But those skills are always secondary to the depth of character. The whole shift is moving from training people just to be in charge, to equipping them to, well, metaphorically, lay down their lives for the people they guide.
Which requires a totally different kind of training, a different formation process.
Exactly. And the sources provide this revolutionary blueprint for it.
Yeah.
The serve, shepherd, send pathway. This isn't just theory. It's laid out as an intensely practical 3-stage journey.
Right. It's a pathway. It starts at stage 1,
Serve.
The idea is you can't lead effectively until you first learn how to kneel, metaphorically speaking. This whole first phase is about shaping leaders' posture, getting them close to the ground, fostering proximity.
But how do you operationalize that? I mean, how do you get a busy, maybe high-powered leader to actually focus on service?
Through mandated practices. The sources talk about something called boundary presence.
Boundary presence.
It means carving out scheduled weekly time, not just in meetings, but in community contexts, outside their usual comfort zone. Maybe serving at a food bank, a shelter, or something like that, or even taking on specific low-risk service roles within their own organization.
Why low risk?
It tests humility. It makes sure the leader learns the names, maybe learns the struggles of the people before they try to lead them from a distance.
That's powerful. Learning the reality on the ground first.
Yeah.
Okay, so if step 1 is grounding in service, step 2 is about developing skills.
Right. That's stage 2, shepherd. After they've shown that servant posture, then the leader learns how to tend, how to guide. This is where skill development and deep knowledge come in. Things like governance training, financial stewardship education, practicing conflict resolution, supervised pastoral or care roles.
So learning how to protect, feed, guide the flock, so to speak.
Exactly. Learning to set policies that genuinely serve people, not just policies that enforce control from the top.
Okay. Serve, then shepherd. And the final stage, that's about multiplication.
Yes. Stage 3, send. This is the release phase, the mission phase. The ultimate test of whether this formation has actually worked isn't whether the leader stays dominant,
Right.
but whether they can reproduce themselves, develop other leaders. Sending requires what the sources call an apprenticeship requirement.
Meaning?
Every experienced leader should be actively mentoring, investing deeply in, say, 2 or 3 emerging leaders. Authority needs to be pushed down, decentralized. And this is often marked by, like, public commissioning ceremonies or rituals that formally shift responsibility.
So the fruit of this whole pathway, it's measured differently too, isn't it? Not just by numbers or growth charts, but by resilience, authenticity.
Yeah, it's multidimensional. You look for spiritual indicators, for lack of a better term, like, is there visible growth in emotional maturity, patience, kindness across the whole community or organization?
Cool.
And you also look at institutional health. Are succession plans actually clear and in place? Are the finances transparent? Do volunteers stick around long-term, or is there high turnover? Is conflict chronic and unresolved, or is it handled constructively? Fruit is evidence of real depth, not just surface activity.
Now, because this model is so different, so countercultural, and demands such high character,
Yeah.
there must be pitfalls, right? Ways it can go wrong or be faked.
Oh, absolutely. Listeners really need to be able to spot these because they often look like service on the surface, but they feel manipulative or controlling underneath.
Like what? Give us an example.
Okay, one big one is toxic humility.
Toxic humility.
Yeah, it's when humility is used as an excuse to dodge necessary conflict or avoid making tough decisions. The leader's always saying, oh, I'm not worthy, or I couldn't possibly decide that, or I'm just here to serve.
And nothing gets done. They paralyze action.
Exactly. They force others to take the risks or make the calls, all under the guise of being humble. It's actually passive aggression sometimes.
That's a huge problem. Shirking leadership by pretending to be self-effacing. Okay, what's another trap?
Paternalism. This is that covert control thing, usually done in the name of caring for people. It's the classic, we know what's best for you attitude.
Yes.
The leader uses language about protecting people or sacrificing for them, but really it's about centralizing power and shutting down input from the very people they're supposed to be serving.
And the last one you mentioned, something about performance.
Right, performance service. This is especially tempting today with social media and all that. It's using acts of sacrifice or service primarily as a status signal, a photo op.
Look how much I'm serving.
Exactly. It's service done to get prestige, not to genuinely meet a need. And ironically, it just reinforces the celebrity culture that this whole servant model is trying to dismantle.
Okay, those are dangerous traps. So how do we fight against them? How do we operationalize the safeguards? The sources suggest some practical tools, right? Things you could implement tomorrow.
Yeah, they do. They talk about institutionalized humility. 3 tools stand out. First, the service log.
A log, like tracking hours.
Sort of, but it's more than that. It's maybe weekly, pretty low tech. Yes, you track the service activity, but critically, you also track the reflection that goes with it. What did I learn? What biases came up? And importantly, what boundaries did I keep or fail to keep?
So it forces reflection on the internal state, not just the external action, and accountability for those mundane tasks.
Precisely. And it helps prevent burnout by making the leader reflect on their own limits and emotional responses during service.
Okay, accountability through reflection. I like that. What's the second tool for keeping egos in check?
The 360-degree mini-survey. Short, anonymous, maybe 10-12 questions on a simple 1 to 5 scale.
Asking about what?
Measuring practical servant behaviors. Things like, how well does this leader listen? How humble do they seem? Do they delegate effectively? How do they respond to critique? And crucially, you get this feedback from everyone, peers, direct reports, volunteers.
So the leader can't hide behind their title or curated image.
Exactly. It breaks through the bubble and combats that paternalism we talked about.
Makes sense. And finally, structural safeguards to stop people getting entrenched in power.
Yeah, governance safeguards. The sources say these are basically non-negotiable for long-term health. Things like term limits for high authority roles.
Right.
Mandatory rotation of roles so skills get spread around and no one becomes indispensable. And requiring mandatory sabbaticals, real breaks every 5 to 7 years or so.
Why sabbaticals?
To prevent burnout, obviously, but also to fight against that sense of entitlement or clericalism, the idea that the role belongs to the person. These structures force humility and decentralization into the system itself.
You know, what strikes me as really powerful about this whole framework is how it translates. This isn't just for churches or nonprofits, is it?
Not at all.
You could apply these ethics, humility, justice, serving others in a corporate setting, couldn't you? Or civic leadership. prioritizing stewardship over just personal gain, protecting vulnerable employees or citizens, being accountable.
That's exactly the point. That's the essence of the translation. You move from defining power as something you own and have to protect
Mhm.
to seeing power as something you intentionally, strategically spend for the benefit of others and the mission.
Wow. Okay, this has been a really profound deep dive. We've pretty much established that true lasting influence doesn't come from the top of the pyramid, which is always a bit shaky, isn't it?
Always precarious.
But it flows from the bottom, from that stable, steady posture of service, from the basin, as you said.
Right. Servant leadership, the sources argue, is the essential DNA, the grammar, really, of fruitful, sustainable influence. It defines what resilient, authentic leadership looks like, regardless of the field.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? If leadership is genuinely rooted in servanthood, if character truly has to come before competence, if humility is the core measure of influence that lasts, what might change tomorrow in how you lead your team or your family or your community group? The sources leave us with a pretty powerful closing question. And the answer to that question, well, it might just be the turning point, not just for your own leadership journey, but maybe for the lives of the people you're responsible for.
So the question remains, are you ready to take up the towel?